Hey everybody, today I want to talk a little bit about credit cards. Um, a lot of you have seen that there's all this stuff in the news about EMV cards versus magnetic stripe cards versus cell phone pay systems like Apple Pay or Samsung Pay or Google Pay. And a lot of people don't seem to understand how some of those things work, and so I want to take a minute and kind of explain how they work to those that don't understand. If you already get it, skip this video. It's probably going to be boring as hell for you. If you don't get it, maybe you'll learn something. Traditionally, the way that credit cards work is there's a magnetic stripe on the back of your card that contains a bunch of information, including the credit card number and your some of your address information and your name information, etc. So that when you swipe the card, all that information gets transferred magnetically, just like it would off of an old cassette tape or something like that, into the computer or terminal, which then takes that with the amount that it wants to charge and transmits it up to the credit card processor, who then either approves it or disapproves it based upon their computer's information about whether or not you've got your money and et cetera, et cetera. It'll either check with your bank or with your credit card issuer if you're not over your credit line, if it's a stolen card, et cetera, et cetera. That system is not really secure because anybody can take that information that's read off of that magnetic strip and store it and transmit it again later with another purchase amount. There was a big data breach at Target, and that's what happened was all those credit card numbers got stored by Target, and like 70 million credit card numbers across the United States and Canada got hacked, and the people just took those card numbers and they could make fraudulent charges against them. Now, the answer to that has been these new EMV cards, or chip and pin cards, or chip and signature cards. Depends on who you ask what they're called. EMV actually stands for EuroPay, MasterCard, and Visa. They were the three companies that got together to create the initial standard for the little chip. And I'll try and put a picture of that chip on the screen right about here. That chip is actually a little microcomputer, and they're significantly more expensive to produce than the magnetic stripe cards, which are dirt cheap. Those little computers inside of there have some cryptography and some compute power inside of them, so that when you insert them into the chip reader, what happens is they then get power from the station that's trying to interact with it, and it puts the dollar amount that you're trying to spend into the chip, which creates kind of a one-time ish use bit of information that is a checksum, which is a number that computes with your card number and the amount that you're supposed to pay, and then sends that off to the credit card processor, and they check to make sure that that actually works for that card the way that that card should process that information. And then there's also a third step that is supposed to be involved in the process, which requires you to put in a PIN number that also verifies in the whole checksum to make sure that everything works correctly. So you have your little computer that's doing the math before it gets transmitted with the amount that you're paying and a PIN number, and that should make everything secure. Except that's not the way that America has instituted the process in many cases. What we've done is we've gone to a hybrid system that still uses the little chip reader and supposedly does the math, but oftentimes the amount that gets transmitted gets sent along with whatever the checksum is for the card and all of your personal information, and they have you write out your signature instead of putting in your PIN number, because they've bypassed that step to kind of have a stopgap to get people to start using the EMV chips. And so a hacker, if they were good enough, could actually work backwards from the credit card information that gets transmitted and the amount that got paid with the checksum that got sent to figure out what that checksum is, and actually the card ends up being slightly more secure than the magnetic strip because the information is not sent all clear text, but it's not as secure as it actually should be because we're not actually following the standards in some cases. Some banks absolutely do fully implement the standard and everything works like it's supposed to. The third payment option out there that we have is things like Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, Google Wallet, those types of things, which your information is stored on your cell phone, and it interacts with a wireless reader inside of the payment terminal that talks back and forth with your phone and then connects up to the internet. I've had many people tell me that they don't want to use this system because they're afraid of their cell phone getting hacked and their personal information getting out and having their identity stolen that way. That's not how this works. When you put your credit card information into Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, Google Wallet, whatever, your number, your credit card number, is not stored on your phone at all. Okay? It only uses the number to verify that yes, you really do have the card, and oftentimes there's also a third party verification to make sure that yes, you really do want your credit card associated with this mobile payment system. That mobile payment system, when you go to a register and you set your phone down on the reader, it talks to your phone and says, this is how much money we're wanting to charge. Your phone then goes to your bank and says, there's a charge for this amount that I'm trying to spend, and I am the phone, I say it's good, and it's been verified on my phone with a fingerprint or with a PIN code or whatever is required by your payment system. And the bank says, okay, here's a one-time number that you can use that will verify for this payment amount at this location. Go ahead and give them this number. That number then gets transmitted wirelessly into the reader, which goes back out to the internet and says, hey, I'm trying to charge this amount to this number. Is it okay? And the bank says, yes, that's perfectly fine. It's been verified by the company that issued the card. And then it comes back down and approves your purchase. Your actual credit card number never gets transmitted in the process because there's a unique ID for your phone with your PIN for that purchase amount at that specific time code that allows that payment to go through. The absolute safest way that you can pay is actually with your cell phone. I know everybody's worried about the security and technology and, whether or not, your identity can get stolen online and that sort of thing, but the wireless payment system that we have with our cell phones, because it's a one-time use number that allows that payment to go through, is actually the most secure way that you can pay. Unfortunately, there's some banks that still haven't got on board with this. They don't allow your debit cards to get put in as Apple Pay or Samsung Pay or Google Wallet or whatever. And there's some of the systems have tried to come around, work around that in some ways or whatever. But really, the best thing that can happen is an integration between your bank and your cell phone mobile payment option and the companies that are accepting payment, because that's the absolute most secure way that this thing can work. So the EMV chips can be a good thing. If we would implement the standard more rigidly, we would have a much better security payment system in our country. Europe, by the way, has already implemented this a long time ago. These EMV chips are not new. They were actually invented in like 1984 or something like that. And we've just been like the last country to try and adopt them. Actually, I think there's some South American countries that are actually behind us in adoption, but just barely. And the reason why we haven't done it, even though we're a very technologically advanced nation, is because it's a lot of money. Those magnetic strip cards that I was talking about, they cost usually less than $1 with the amount that they push through, the huge bulk that they process these cards in and they create and send out to all of us. The EMV chip cards, every one of them has to be unique, and so it costs anywhere from $15 to $20 a card. So we're talking, I think the number was like total for all banks to switch all credit cards over to the EMV chip system and to actually implement it correctly was going to be like $8 to $10 billion that the banks were going to have to spend. And even though it's been federally mandated since I think like last October, which is a year ago now, they still haven't fully implemented the system. So anyway, sorry for the long rant. Sorry for the big long explanation and my personal opinions in here. But I thought it was important, especially with the dearth of information out there and the lack of real understanding by some people how credit cards get processed and mobile payments get processed. I hope this helps shed some light on it and make everybody understand a little better. If you liked this, like, share, and subscribe. Make a comment down below. I'm always interested to know what other people think. If you enjoyed this type of video where I'm explaining things, please tell me. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do with this channel and how I want to do it. So if you've got ideas or things that you like, if you like this format, let me know, and I'm gonna try and create more content that you guys like. So until next time, I'll see you guys later.